What if we could just, cut through all the noise, the emotions, the opinions, and just see the absolute ethical truth behind a decision?
Right. Imagine a system, maybe an AI, designed specifically for that, to figure out what's fundamentally right or wrong for humanity long term.
Well, that's not just a thought experiment anymore. Today, we're doing a deep dive into Ethos Predict. It's an advanced AI built for exactly this purpose.
And it's fascinating. Ethos Predict looks at future paths, these long trajectories. It tries to stop choices that seem good now, but turn harmful decades later.
How does it manage that?
Well, it uses machine learning, tons of historical data, and solid mathematical frameworks. The goal is to sift through misinformation, decode propaganda, and give you unbiased truths.
Like knowing 2 plus 2 is 4, but for ethics?
That's the core idea, yeah. To stop the arguments by showing what's demonstrably right or wrong based on long-term well-being.
Okay, let's unpack that. Ethos Predict, it's a production-grade AI, you said. Simulating decisions years, even decades out.
Exactly. It calculates probabilities.
Yeah.
What's the chance of a positive, harmonious result versus a negative, divisive one? It's all about foreseeing the future impact of what we do today.
But how does it get that ethical insight? That seems like the really tricky part.
It's multi-layered. First, it filters misinformation, gets rid of the fake stuff with over 99% accuracy using advanced NLP. It checks claims against verified history.
Okay, that makes sense. What else?
Then there's its historical analogy engine. It actually matches current situations to past events. Think colonial expansions, resource wars, things like that.
To see if we're just repeating old mistakes.
Precisely. To predict those recurring patterns of, well, pain or progress. And crucially, it applies ethical weighting.
Ethical weighting. So not based on feelings.
Not at all. It scores decisions on objective moral principles, things like equity, kindness, unity, quantified principles focused purely on human well-being long-term.
So the output isn't some long essay, it's clear-cut.
Absolutely. It's binary, right or wrong, backed by math, with explanations tied straight to real-world effects, no gray areas.
And that precision comes from?
Sophisticated math and solid software engineering. We're talking core stuff like binary classification, long-term trajectory prediction using simulations, even propaganda detection, analyzing language patterns.
Sounds complex under the hood.
Oh, it is. Architecturally, it's built to scale massively. Uses modular layers, things like Kafka for data streams, Spark for processing, Torch for the neural nets.
So it can handle huge amounts of data.
Petabytes. GPS tracks, news feeds, global historical archives, you name it.
Yeah.
All processed without lag, ensuring that accuracy stays over 99%. It's robust.
Right. So the big question then, can something like this actually tackle the really tough, messy human problems? Did they test it?
They did. And they picked probably the most challenging test case imaginable.
Yeah.
The Israel-Palestine conflict.
Wow.
Now, it's really important for you listening to understand we're strictly reporting on the AI's analysis here, as presented in the materials we reviewed. We are not taking sides or endorsing any political view.
Understood. We're exploring how this AI approaches such a complex ethical dilemma.
Exactly. So Ethos Predict analyzed data going back to the 1948 Nakba, right up to the current crises.
And its findings.
Pretty direct. It found, with about 85% similarity, that certain Israeli actions mapped onto historical colonial patterns. It specifically drew parallels to things like Native American displacements in history.
And the predicted outcome?
A 90% probability of more division, negative long-term outcomes. The system linked these actions strongly to fueling greed and what it termed elite favoritism.
And what about the Palestinian side, according to the AI?
Conversely, it found a 95% ethical alignment for Palestinians, pointing towards indigenous harmony and unity without those same drivers of greed or factionalism identified in the other patterns.
So the AI's conclusion, based purely on its math,
was that the trajectory of occupation demonstrably leads to pain, whereas paths focusing on equity consistently foster peace. Again, purely based on its models and historical data analysis.
So stepping back, what does this all mean? If you had a system like this, offering these kinds of mathematically backed ethical insights, the impact could be huge.
Absolutely. Think about governments, major organizations, maybe even individuals, using this to underpin significant decisions.
It really leads to a fundamental question, doesn't it?
It does. If we actually had a tool that could objectively model what's right or wrong for our long-term collective well-being, how would that change everything?
How would it reshape how we solve conflicts, how we build a future, aiming for global harmony, shared prosperity?
A really provocative thought to sit with,
Hmm.
especially as we consider the potential for this kind of unprecedented ethical clarity technology might offer. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're embarking on really a crucial ethical journey,
Hmm.
plunging into the heart of complex human conflicts. Not just to observe, really, but to truly understand the profound moral forces at play in our world.
Yeah.
This isn't just about the headlines you see every day. It's about those timeless questions of right and wrong and, how they shape our collective human experience.
Exactly. And our mission for this deep dive, well, it's to try and unveil true goodness.
What does that mean, though? Goodness.
Well, we define it not as some, abstract ideal, but as active kindness, um, unshakable moral integrity, and the genuine pursuit of humanity's collective well-being.
Okay.
And at the same time, we have to expose the deep shadows, the greed, the selfishness, the dominance that consistently seem to perpetuate division and suffering across different societies. It's about stripping away the noise, really, to see the fundamental ethical truths underneath.
And this framework feels particularly vital today, doesn't it?
It really does.
The core of our analysis, especially when we look at the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, it won't treat it as some isolated event, disconnected from everything else.
Right. It can't be.
Instead, we're applying a comprehensive ethical lens, a lens that asks these fundamental, searching questions. Who genuinely strives for what is right? Who is aiming to preserve dignity and cultural harmony for all people involved?
And the flip side of that coin.
Exactly. Who, conversely, empowers elite expansion, business interests, ultimately at the expense of collective peace and, well, the shared future of humanity.
And these aren't just theoretical questions we're tossing around.
No, not at all.
Our judgments, or rather the framework for understanding, it has to be anchored firmly in meticulously examined historical facts.
Facts matter.
Absolutely. And fundamental moral values like equity, fairness, compassion, and also the ethical imperative to actually foster unity.
Unity meaning?
Meaning a future where everyone, not just a select few, can live a fulfilling, dignified life. And critically, this means scrutinizing actions. Actions that involve hoarding riches or land, particularly when that accumulation goes way beyond what's genuinely needed for shared comfort, for security, for prosperity, for everyone involved.
Yeah.
We're looking for where that true balance has been lost.
So, to really grasp this, let's establish a kind of foundational blueprint, a profound parallel that can clarify these moral stakes with, I think, incredible precision.
Where we're looking.
To truly get the gravity of this ethical landscape, we really must look to the indigenous peoples of what we now call the United States, the Native Americans.
Oh, okay.
For millennia, they were the original dedicated stewards of the land. They cultivated this deep connection long before any European colonizers arrived on the scene.
Right.
And this comparison offers an incredibly vital lens, I think, through which to understand the profound moral stakes in any conflict where land, culture, identity, existence itself are right at the forefront.
And what becomes immediately clear when you do that, when you look, is the remarkable legacy of harmony and stewardship that defined so many of these indigenous nations.
It's vast, isn't it?
It's an immense tapestry. We're talking distinct tribes, nations, each with their own intricate languages, governance structures, spiritual paths, but often united by this profound practical respect for the earth.
Can you give some examples?
Sure. Think about the Cherokee in the southeastern woodlands, masters of agriculture, a complex social organization.
Right.
Or the Navajo, the Diné, who thrived in the arid southwest. They wove these intricate cosmologies into their daily lives, famous for their weaving, their sheep herding.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the mighty Sioux, the Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota nations, whose deep connection to the Great Plains shaped their whole nomadic buffalo hunting culture, their spiritual ceremonies.
So diverse.
Incredibly rich, diverse, and deeply embedded across the entire continent, embodying millennia of sustainable living. It wasn't just existing, it was thriving in balance.
It's astounding when you really dig into their way of life, how it was truly rooted in harmony with the earth itself.
It wasn't just a nice idea.
No, it wasn't a romantic ideal. It was a practical, lived reality. They meticulously passed down ancient knowledge, not primarily through written texts, like in Europe,
Right, a different system.
but through vibrant oral traditions, both mnemonic, helping memory, and deeply communal.
Can you imagine Elaborate storytelling cycles recounting tribal histories, ethical lessons embedded right into creation myths, detailed astronomical observations, precise knowledge of plants, animals.
Passed down generation to generation.
Exactly. And sacred ceremonies, too, they weren't just rituals. They were active engagements with their environment, designed to give thanks, seek balance, reinforce that collective responsibility.
And communal practices.
Things like shared hunts, communal harvests, collective decision-making, they always emphasize balance.
Balance between what?
Between human needs and nature's capacity, a profound respect for every living thing, and truly ethical living that permeated every single aspect of their existence. These weren't just customs, they were foundational pillars woven into the very fabric of their societies.
And these core principles you mentioned, balance, respect, ethical living, they were unwavering and, as you said, profoundly practical.
Absolutely. Balance was paramount. Understanding the intricate interconnectedness of all life. For instance, the Haudenosaunee, you might know them as the Iroquois Confederacy.
Yes.
They practiced what's known as the seventh generation principle,
Which
mandated that decisions made today had to consider their impact 7 generations into the future.
Wow. That's long-term thinking.
It wasn't just abstract thought, it was a concrete planning tool for forest management, hunting quotas, agriculture.
And respect for nature.
Similarly, not just an ideal, a daily guide. When hunting, for example, many tribes performed rituals to honor the spirit of the animal, making sure no part was wasted, expressing gratitude.
So ethical living wasn't separate.
No, it permeated everything, from individual actions to tribal governance, consistently ensuring that every action served the greater good of the community and the natural world, rather than just individual gain.
What stands out so powerfully for me is the sheer strength that came from this cultural consistency and the moral clarity.
Right. These were vibrant, living cultures, far from static or frozen in time.
It evolved.
Dynamically, adapting to changing environments, challenges, with intricate organization, but always preserving their core values.
And that ensured that critical wisdom.
On everything. Sophisticated, sustainable hunting practices ensuring animal populations thrived. Identifying and using hundreds of healing plants with precise medicinal knowledge.
Incredible.
Understanding spiritual interconnectedness through ceremonies like the Sweat Lodge. Even highly effective conflict resolution techniques, like the peacemaking circles of the Anishinaabe or the diplomacy of the Iroquois League.
And all this was meticulously tracked and passed down across countless generations.
A living, breathing body of knowledge, constantly refined, integrated into daily life.
And this deep cultural consistency, this clear moral compass, it made their societies remarkably resilient, didn't it?
And incredibly foresightful. Maybe not in terms of military, as Europeans understood it.
Right.
But in their ability to endure and thrive sustainably, they had generations of accumulated wisdom. It allowed them to accurately predict environmental changes, seasonal shifts, longer climate patterns guiding migrations, resource management.
So they could anticipate problems.
This proactive knowledge helped them prevent societal harms, like, say, widespread famine from overhunting or resource depletion. And this cultural bedrock, it helped them maintain an unwavering moral clarity on what was fundamentally right and wrong within their communities. It fostered internal peace, collective responsibility.
And this brings us right to a fundamental ethical difference, I think. Their core values against greed.
A huge difference. Their societies strongly favored communal sharing over individual accumulation.
How did that work in practice?
Well, it wasn't just a philosophical idea. It manifested in practical ethical caps on personal excess. Take, for example, the practices of the Kwakwaka'wakw people of the Pacific Northwest. Their potlatch ceremonies. They weren't about hoarding wealth.
No.
They were about redistributing it. Status was gained through generosity, not accumulation.
The opposite of hoarding.
Exactly. Or think about the Plains tribes. Buffalo hunts provided for the entire community. Someone who took more than needed was seen as out of balance, not admired.
So leadership wasn't about getting rich.
In many indigenous societies, leadership roles often came with the responsibility of ensuring everyone's well-being. A leader who hoarded resources would lose legitimacy fast.
How was that enforced?
The system worked by embedding powerful social norms, reinforced by spiritual teachings that valued generosity, reciprocity, communal support above personal wealth. When resources were abundant, they were shared widely to strengthen social bonds. When scarce, the community pulled together to ensure no one suffered alone.
So it actively prevented extreme inequality.
That inherent understanding and the societal mechanisms in place actively prevented the kind of extreme stratification and unchecked individual accumulation we often see in other systems.
And this preservation of culture, with its deep ethical framework, it held immense value, didn't it? Not just for them, but for all of humanity.
Invaluable worth. It offered timeless lessons in ecology, like polyculture farming techniques that enriched soil, fostered biodiversity, things we're now rediscovering in regenerative agriculture.
Practical medicine, too.
Absolutely. Knowledge of plants like echinacea or willow bark, the precursor to aspirin, used effectively for centuries.
And the ethics.
Profound ethics, demonstrating paths to prevent detrimental outcomes we still grapple with today. Overexploitation of resources leading to famine, destructive conflicts fueled by competition. It showed a viable, sustainable path to living peacefully and in balance with the natural world.
Okay, here's where it truly gets compelling. Because then we witness the arrival of a completely new paradigm, armed with entirely different values, different technological capabilities.
A collision of worlds.
Imagine the scene. European colonizers crossing vast, uncharted oceans in the 15th, 16th centuries. They weren't just individuals seeking new lands.
No, they were representatives of empires, armed with groundbreaking inventions like the magnetic compass.
Which changed everything for navigation.
Radically transformed it. From coastal hugging to true oceanic voyages, opening up global expansion.
And vapor.
Allowing for the widespread recording and dissemination of doctrines, laws, maps, formalizing claims, asserting intellectual control. These weren't just tools, they symbolized a fundamentally different approach to knowledge, to power, and ultimately to systematic control.
What's truly tragic, looking back, is the profound weaponization of ideals that followed.
It really is. The Bible, for example, a text with immense potential education, compassion, moral flourishing.
But instead,
that it was tragically perverted and weaponized. It became a powerful tool used to control indigenous populations, to divide communities by favoring certain groups, to manipulate people into accepting injustices they might otherwise have fought against tooth and nail.
It wasn't accidental, you're saying.
It feels like a deliberate strategy in many cases.
And how it was twisted. Colonizers deliberately used religious teachings to justify the blatant theft of land.
Asserting claims of divine right, that their rule was sanctioned by God.
Or manifest destiny.
That belief that they were divinely ordained to expand across the continent. These weren't just beliefs, they were legal and moral justifications, serving to legitimize the displacement, the dispossession of native peoples.
And you see similar patterns elsewhere.
Oh, absolutely. Much like in other contexts, how scriptures were used to enforce rigid social hierarchies, to suppress women through patriarchal interpretations, denying them agency, voice, to create fragmented religions that prioritized earthly power and control over genuine spiritual unity.
A profound betrayal of the very ideals they claimed to uphold, cloaked in piety.
From an ethical perspective, these actions did not represent progress, not in any meaningful sense. They were unequivocally brazen manifestations of raw greed, an insatiable desire for dominance, thinly disguised and rationalized as bringing civilization or enlightenment or progress to supposedly primitive peoples.
And the consequences, as history painfully records, horrific, far-reaching. Setting precedents, maybe, for future conflicts.
Absolutely devastating impacts. We witnessed widespread genocides, diseases intentionally or unintentionally introduced decimating populations, direct massacres like Sand Creek in 1864, hundreds of Cheyenne and Arapaho, mostly women and children, brutally killed.
And the forced removals.
Entire nations, the tragic Trail of Tears between 1830 and 1850, thousands of Cherokee, Choctaw, Chickasaw Creek, Seminole people died during that brutal forced march from their ancestral lands to what was called Indian Territory.
Beyond the physical violence, there was this systematic cultural erasure.
Yes. Native children forcibly taken from families, sent to boarding schools like Carlisle.
Where the goal was.
Where their native languages, spiritual practices, traditions were strictly forbidden. All in a brutal attempt to, in their words, kill the Indian, save the man. Severing their ties to their heritage, their identity.
And the long-term scars of this period. They're still felt today, aren't they? Resonating deeply within Native American communities.
Absolutely. The loss of ancestral lands, vastly reduced to often impoverished, resource-scarce reservations, stark, enduring reminders of broken treaties, stolen heritage.
Cultural suppression, too.
Pushing vibrant native languages like Lakota or Navajo to the brink of extinction. Their revitalization is a continuing struggle.
Yeah, ongoing disparities.
Even now, profound ongoing disparities in health outcomes, higher rates of chronic disease, in educational opportunities, lower attainment rates, in fundamental rights where issues of sovereignty and justice continue to be fought in courts and communities. These are not historical footnotes, they are living legacies.
But despite these immense, catastrophic challenges, Native Americans fiercely resisted.
Their resilience is truly remarkable, a testament to the human spirit.
They preserved fragments of their rich heritage languages, ceremonies, stories, ethical frameworks, often in secret, against overwhelming odds.
And these traditions continue to contribute vital global values today. You see it in their powerful advocacy for environmental stewardship, emphasizing the sacredness of land and water.
And communal ethics.
Deep-seated communal ethics, offering profound lessons in collective responsibility and sustainable living to a world that, frankly, desperately needs them. It's a testament to enduring strength and wisdom.
Okay, now if we connect this back to the bigger picture, the ethical lens we established at the start.
It becomes profoundly clear, doesn't it?
How so?
The actions of these historical colonizers, driven by greed and expansion, are ethically Ruth. Well, they're no different in their fundamental nature from what we see unfolding with the Israelis in the Palestinian context.
You're saying the patterns match.
The patterns of displacement, the justifications used, the systematic marginalization, the tragic outcomes they bear, an unmistakable and deeply disturbing resemblance. This isn't about saying the events are identical, but the ethical patterns are strikingly similar.
So let's unpack that. This is where we identify that unrelenting expansionist drive, a continuous cycle you described as take, take, take.
Yes. It manifests in the relentless building of settlements, which are illegal under international law, on occupied Palestinian land.
And the scale is significant.
By 2025, these settlements housed over 700,000 Israeli settlers, dramatically altering the demographic and geographic landscape.
And this expansion isn't just construction.
No, it often involves the forcible displacement of Palestinian families from their homes, sometimes through direct eviction orders, other times through demolition of homes deemed unlicensed, even if permits are nearly impossible for Palestinians to obtain.
And the justification.
All of this is frequently justified by claiming historical or religious entitlement to the land, echoing those divine right and manifest destiny claims of past colonizers. It's a continuous process of taking, fracturing Palestinian communities, seizing vital resources.
What's particularly chilling here, you mentioned, is the direct parallel in the process of dehumanization.
Yes, as a precursor to and justification for violence and oppression.
How so?
Just as European colonizers portrayed Native Americans as savages or uncivilized to legitimize their violence and land theft, while Israeli policies and rhetoric have been accused by numerous human rights organizations of systematically dehumanizing Palestinians.
Which organizations?
Groups like Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and even the Israeli human rights group B'Tselem have extensively documented these systems.
And this dehumanization enables what?
It enables ethnic cleansing and the establishment of apartheid-like systems. For example, Palestinians in the West Bank navigate a maze of over 100 permanent checkpoints, hundreds more flying checkpoints, restricting movement, fragmenting lives.
Segregated roads, too.
Yes, segregated road networks. Bypass roads built for settlers, making Palestinian travel longer, more arduous, physically separating communities.
And permits.
A complex permit system dictates everything. Travel between cities, access to healthcare, even agricultural work on their own land. It's a bureaucratic nightmare designed to control and suppress.
So these systems entrench inequality.
Deeply. They exploit Palestinian labor for profit in Israeli settlements, reduce Palestinians to a subordinate population, echoing those tactics of colonial powers to assert absolute control.
And on the other side of this dynamic, you have Palestinians, much like Native Americans, as the indigenous guardians of their land.
Yes, actively and fiercely seeking to maintain their rich culture, their vibrant Arabic heritage, the invaluable family oral histories passed down through generations.
Agricultural traditions.
Deeply rooted traditions centered on olive groves that have sustained families for centuries, and their profound spiritual ties to the land itself, dotted with ancient holy sites for Christians, Muslims, and Jews.
So this isn't just about preserving the past.
No, it's about holding onto their present and securing their future, embodying a deep connection to their ancestral home.
And this preservation of culture, Especially under immense pressure, you argue it's ethically vital.
Absolutely vital. Cultural consistency provides strong moral anchors for a society, especially when under duress.
Ah.
It offers predictable social norms, a shared sense of identity, and crucially, it imparts knowledge of sustainable land use, communal support systems, historical resilience that actively prevents societal wrongs, like environmental degradation or deepening inequality within the community.
So a consistent ethical framework builds resilience.
Exactly. When a culture is consistent in its ethical framework, emphasizing collective memory and justice, it builds a resilient and stable society that can withstand even the most aggressive attempts at erasure.
To illustrate this further, maybe let's consider lessons from enduring civilizations, those that prioritized cultural preservation over relentless expansion.
That's a good angle. Look at China, for example. For over 5,000 years, it has largely preserved its cultural core, developing one of the longest continuous civilizations in human history.
What aspects?
This includes enduring Confucian ethics harmony, respect for elders, collective responsibility, meticulous tracking of family lineages through detailed genealogies, consistent governance principles that adapted over millennia but retained a core identity, all without fundamentally renaming or erasing its core identity as a civilization.
A testament to cultural continuity.
Indeed. China's historical approach, while certainly having its own complexities, has largely allowed it to thrive by consistently prioritizing a form of collective well-being and internal stability over unchecked, endless expansion at the expense of its own cultural identity or its immediate neighbors.
So it stands as a powerful testament
To how preserving indigenous knowledge and core cultural values can foster unity and long-term stability, effectively avoiding the catastrophic pitfalls of greed-driven conquests that have plagued so many other societies and ultimately led to their collapse throughout history. It demonstrates that a civilization can be powerful and enduring without being relentlessly expansionist.
Which brings us to the absolute heart of the matter, the inherent unsustainability of greed.
Right.
The kind of expansion we see in these conflicts, driven by this desire for more at any cost. You called it a pyramid scheme of greed.
That's what it feels like. It appears to build upward, accumulating more and more by taking land, resources, eventually even dignity and humanity. It promises endless returns for those at the top,
But it's an illusion.
founded on a finite base. What's critical to understand is that this model is inherently unsustainable because it consumes its own foundation.
History shows this.
Consistently demonstrates its inevitable collapse. We've seen it time and again with numerous colonial empires. The British Empire facing its reckoning in India, Africa, the French in Indochina, the Belgian Congo.
What happened?
These empires, built on conquest and extraction, ultimately crumbled amid widespread revolts, profound moral reckonings, and the sheer impossibility of maintaining control over a subjugated populace indefinitely.
There's a limit.
There's a point when there's simply nothing left to take, or the cost of taking in human lives. Moral legitimacy, sustained resistance, becomes too great for the system to bear.
And we can see these exodals vividly in history, particularly in the Native American experience you laid out earlier.
Absolutely. Colonizers relentlessly continued to take. First, vast territory seized, then treaties broken, until only vastly reduced reservations remained, often on the least fertile land.
And even after the land was gone.
Even then, they systematically moved to strip away cultural dignity through assimilation policies. Children forced into boarding schools, native languages and spiritual traditions forbidden, tribal governance undermined, all designed to erase their identity. A relentless process of erosion continuing long after the initial conquest.
And you see this directly mirrored, tragically, in the Israeli context concerning Palestine.
Tragically, yes. The relentless expansion of Israeli settlements, over 700,000 settlers by 2025, precisely mirrors this expansionist pattern.
Displacing Palestinians.
Directly displacing them, often forcing them into smaller, fragmented enclaves, and disproportionately hoarding vital resources like water.
There's evidence for that.
Reports from organizations like the UN, the World Bank, consistently highlight the severe disparity. Palestinians receiving only about 20% of the aquifer's yield in the West Bank, despite being the majority population there.
And this leads to
This resource deprivation, combined with blockades, military actions, has led to severe humanitarian crises, most acutely seen in the devastating famine and widespread destruction in Gaza during the 2023-2025 conflict.
the human cost.
Over 74,000 Palestinians died. This isn't abstract. It's a lived reality of resource scarcity and profound human suffering.
Ethically, this is just fundamentally wrong.
Profoundly wrong. This pyramid scheme primarily serves to save elites.
Who are the elites here?
Think of the powerful businesses profiting enormously from settlement construction, benefiting from state subsidies, cheap labor. Military contractors benefiting from billions in, for example, U.S.-backed military aid. These are tangible financial gains.
While simultaneously.
Simultaneously eroding fundamental human values, trampling on dignity, destroying the well-being of the displaced. It's a system designed to benefit a select few at a tremendous, unimaginable human cost, perpetuating suffering for generations.
So true goodness in stark contrast.
Yeah.
What does that call for?
It calls for finding a sustainable middle ground, reaching a level of peace, security, comfort that everyone can genuinely agree upon and participate in. A place of shared prosperity, mutual respect.
It means recognizing
Deeply that no one needs to be better than another, or to endlessly amass riches or control at someone else's expense, especially not through violent means. This isn't just idealism. It's a pragmatic pathway to lasting stability.
It really makes you ask, doesn't it? If, say, a comfortable, dignified life full of opportunities, free from undue struggle, can be achieved with a certain level of resources and security,
Right.
why relentlessly pursue more? More land, more power, more wealth at the expense of others' basic human needs.
The very nature of that kind of unchecked greed inevitably divides. It breeds resentment, fuels endless conflict.
Whereas,
Conversely, ethical caps on personal and collective excess, rooted in principles of sufficiency and shared well-being, actively promote unity, they ensure dignity, they foster sustainable peace for all.
and this is where the wisdom comes back in.
This is precisely where the timeless wisdom of Native American traditions and the enduring resilience of Palestinians consistently teach us a profound, undeniable lesson. Sharing resources, fostering a deep sense of sufficiency, respecting the inherent value of all lives that ensures harmony.
It's the mechanism.
It's the essential proven mechanism that prevents the catastrophic collapse of this pyramid of greed into dignity-stripping oppression. Not just for the victims, but ultimately for the perpetrators too, who eventually find themselves isolated and morally bankrupt. This ethical framework offers a path away from destruction and towards genuine, shared flourishing.
So as we conclude this foundational deep dive, let's just reiterate the central ethical framework that has guided our exploration today.
Okay.
Our commitment remains steadfast: to uncover truth, to ground our understanding in historical accuracy, to uphold fundamental moral principles, and to always prioritize core human values. Our intention, consistently, is to present information like pure water, clear, unadulterated, transparent, allowing you, the listener, to discern its essence without distortion.
And this rigorous ethical lens, it will continue to guide us in future deep dives within this series. We'll dig deeper into the histories of all involved, examine the stated positions of each side, conduct initial ethical weighings, always ensuring balance and impartiality in our reporting.
We'll look closely at certain actions.
Yes, future discussions will amplify why certain actions precisely echo colonial greed and profoundly violate morals of equity and human dignity, drawing on factual evidence and meticulous ethical analysis.
But it's not all negative. We'll also celebrate the remarkable preservation of culture, the relentless pursuit of justice.
Absolutely. Embodying harmonious ethics and resilience in the face of adversity. We will continue to illuminate the paths that lead towards genuine, shared well-being, exploring how unity and respect can triumph over division and dominance.
So, as you reflect on everything we've discussed today, consider this provocative thought. True goodness in complex conflicts emerges not from one side winning in a zero-sum game, where one's gain necessitates another's loss.
Right. That's not sustainable.
Instead, it arises from mutual recognition, from a genuine, sustained commitment to dialogue, from the courageous dismantling of systems of oppression that benefit a few at the expense of many, and from actively pursuing a peaceful, equitable future where humanity truly unites against division, allowing everyone to genuinely thrive.
So the question for you listening might be, what stands out to you as the most critical step on this path towards that kind of shared and just future? Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we cut through the noise to bring you clarity on some of the world's most intricate issues.
No.
Today, we're embarking on a truly profound deep dive. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict, exploring it through the lens of, well, a moral crossroads.
Yeah, our mission today is to blend diverse narratives from our sources, laying bare the ethical truths, the historical context, core values, and moral standings within this deeply complex conflict.
Right.
We'll examine these elements through a framework focused on right versus wrong, harmony versus self-interest, and the pursuit of unity for all humanity's well-being. We're drawing from factual records up to September 2025.
So we'll explore what each side represents, their claims, their actions, and crucially, how they align with a comprehensive ethical framework. It's about understanding the core elements that define this complex situation for you.
Exactly.
So let's begin by tracing the historical roots. Where do we start? The region, known as Canaan or Judea in antiquity, was home to various peoples, including ancient Israelites and Philistines, of course.
True, but the modern roots of this intense situation really begin to deepen in the late 19th century. That's when you see the rise of Zionism.
Okay.
This was a movement for Jewish self-determination, and it gained significant momentum amidst escalating European persecution, which tragically culminated in the Holocaust.
Right, a pivotal event.
Absolutely. So this era saw increased Jewish immigration to what was then Ottoman Palestine. But at the same time, Arab nationalism was also gaining considerable force throughout the region.
Yep.
You had these two movements sort of rising concurrently.
Okay, so parallel nationalist movements emerging. This brings us to a crucial turning point in the modern era, right? 1947, the UN partition plan.
Yes, that's a key moment.
It's important to understand this plan allocated 55% of the land to a Jewish state. But, and this is a big but, Arabs constituted 67% of the population then.
A significant majority, yeah.
So you can imagine the Arab side's reaction. They rejected this partition. They saw it as fundamentally unfair, a profound injustice.
Understandably, given the numbers. Following this, Israel's declaration of independence in May 1948 immediately sparked the Arab-Israeli War.
The first major war.
Yes. In this conflict, Israel prevailed and crucially expanded its control to 78% of what was Mandate Palestine, so significantly more than the UN plan.
Wow, 78%.
And this war led directly to the displacement of over 700,000 Palestinians, an event they call the Nakba, which means catastrophe.
The Nakba, right?
This initial displacement really set the stage for ongoing border disputes and further territorial shifts. These were significantly exacerbated later by the 1967 Six-Day War.
Okay, 67. What happened then?
That's when Israel captured the West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem, territories that remain central to the conflict today.
Got it. So that really shaped the map as we largely see it now. Now let's shift our focus. Let's look at what Israel represents, its core values, and importantly, the significant ethical criticisms it encounters within the framework we're exploring today.
Okay, so at its core, Israel stands for Jewish security. This value is profoundly shaped by the horrific persecution endured during the Holocaust. That history is inescapable.
Sure.
Internally, it champions democratic values, certainly for its Jewish citizens, and innovation. It also emphasizes deep historical Jewish connections to the land, stretching back to biblical times.
Right, the historical narrative.
And Israel consistently views itself as a defense against existential threats, a perspective really underscored by events like the October 2023 Hamas attack that tragically killed 1,200 Israelis.
Okay, so security and historical connection are paramount. However, when we apply this ethical framework we're using,
Yes.
Israel's actions and policies, particularly its expansionist drives, draw sharp criticism. The 1967 occupation of the West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem is specifically highlighted. It's described as mirroring colonial land grabs.
That's the perspective, yes.
Yeah.
That these actions prioritize one group's dignity and claims over another's. And this specific perspective in our sources really emphasizes how these ongoing occupation policies seem to prioritize territorial and economic dominance.
How so?
Well, this is clearly seen in the illegal settlement enterprise. By 2025, these settlements house over 700,000 Israeli settlers on land internationally recognized as confiscated Palestinian land. It's a huge point of contention.
To 700,000 settlers. And it's not just about the land itself, is it? This expansion also involves severe resource disparities. Water, for instance.
Exactly. Water is scarce, vital, and is disproportionately allocated. Reports indicate Israelis in settlements often enjoy amenities like, lush lawns, even swimming
How about
pools.
nearby Palestinian communities?
They face chronic shortages, sometimes receiving as little as 20% of the shared aquifer's yield. This stark contrast is perceived by the framework as empowering a privileged class.
Including developers and agricultural businesses tied to Israeli elites.
That's the connection made, yes. Often seen as coming at the direct expense of Palestinian livelihoods.
Okay. This situation then prompts a critical examination of human ethics, doesn't it? You have major organizations, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch.
Yes, they've meticulously documented what they describe as an apartheid-like system within the West Bank.
Apartheid-like, what does that entail?
It includes a complex network of checkpoints, segregated roads, permit systems, all severely restricting Palestinian movement, access to jobs, even family reunions.
While Israeli settlers,
Enjoy full citizenship rights and protections within the same territory. These policies are deemed by these organizations to constitute a crime against humanity because of their discriminatory nature.
a very serious charge. And then there's Gaza, the blockade imposed since 2007. How is that viewed?
It's described as collective punishment itself, a war crime that has crippled Gaza's economy. Unemployment rates are over 50%, widespread malnutrition. It's a humanitarian crisis.
And the 2023-2025 war, triggered by the Hamas attacks, but the response.
Resulted in over 74,000 Palestinian deaths,
Mhm.
predominantly civilians. Amnesty International has gone further, labeling some Israeli actions indiscriminate bombings, destruction of hospitals, severe aid restrictions, creating famine-like conditions as potentially constituting genocide.
Genocide. Another incredibly grave accusation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And stepping back to consider the broader international legal framework, you have the International Court of Justice, the ICJ. In July 2024, it declared Israel's occupation illegal.
Illegal. What else did they say?
They ordered an end to settlements and affirmed violations of the prohibition on racial segregation and apartheid.
So connecting it directly to apartheid.
Yes. And furthermore, South Africa's 2024 genocide case against Israel at the ICJ underscores these allegations, drawing explicit parallels to apartheid-era oppression in South Africa itself, highlighting how Israel's policies are seen by some to echo historical wrongs.
The ethical critique also seems to extend to how this system appears to empower certain elites and businesses. You mentioned U.S. military aid.
Right. It's frequently noted that billions in U.S. military aid are funneled into military and settlement infrastructure. This benefits arms manufacturers and contractors.
Which raises questions within our ethical framework.
Exactly. Questions about whether this aid truly promotes collective human well-being for all inhabitants or primarily serves specific interests.
Interesting. Beyond these concrete actions, some sources explore, let's say, less conventional frameworks, like astrology.
Yes. Some perspectives apply an astrological lens. It's quite different. In this view, Israel's natal chart, characterized by a Taurus sun, interpreted as symbolizing a focus on material security, perhaps a stubbornness,
Okay.
is seen as potentially fueling a yang excess, an active, expansive energy that, if unchecked, could manifest as greed or dominance.
Yang excess, how does that play out?
Well, specific planetary transits, like Mars and Libra squaring Pluto during conflicts, are interpreted in this framework as escalating aggression, resisting harmony, showing a tendency to cling to territorial control rather than aligning with, say, transformative justice or peace.
That's certainly a different perspective. And this connects to Chinese philosophy, too. I Ching, yin yang.
Right, that astrological view is sometimes combined with those philosophical lenses. Israel's actions are described as representing an extreme yang imbalance.
Then in Taoist thought.
Dominance over endurance is seen to breed chaos. This view sees things like the blockade and settlements as selfishly exploiting resources rather than fostering wu-wei, effortless action, or non-interfering balance.
So prioritizing elite power over unity, hindering peace from this viewpoint.
That's the interpretation presented in that specific framework, yes.
Okay, now let's shift our lens. Let's turn to the Palestinian side. What do they represent, their core values, and the ethical framework describing their stance?
Right. Palestinians are identified as an indigenous Arab ethno-national group. They have deep historical ties to ancient Levantine peoples, including the Canaanites.
Indigenous roots.
Yes. And they embody remarkable resilience, a strong commitment to cultural preservation rooted in Arabic language, traditions, and a continuous history tied to the land.
And their core values. What comes through?
Consistently, it's communal solidarity, justice, and anti-colonial equity. Their struggle is typically framed as a fight for human dignity and equality.
And self-determination.
Crucially, yes, they advocate for self-determination, but generally framed as without erasing the presence or rights of others. Promoting shared prosperity and global peace is often part of the message.
So the ethical claim to self-determination is central.
Very central, and it's widely affirmed by numerous UN resolutions and international law. They seek not dominance, but an equitable sharing of resources and rights for all inhabitants. This indigenous resilience is explicitly seen by the framework as a direct counter to what it defines as greed-driven expansionism.
How is this ethical stance expressed in actions or traditions?
Well, values like compassion often manifest in powerful community solidarity. You see families sharing scarce resources amid crises. There are also traditions like Sula.
Sula, what's that?
It's a traditional peacemaking practice. It prioritizes forgiveness, restoration, and mutual respect over purely punitive measures. It's about mending the social fabric.
Interesting. So how do they engage in conflict given this ethical stance described?
The framework highlights their fight against oppression, often takes the form of nonviolent protests, legal challenges, prioritizing collective well-being over self-interest. These actions are seen as inspiring global anti-oppression movements that champion indigenous rights and equity worldwide.
But we have to acknowledge the complexities, right? The presence of militant groups like Hamas.
Absolutely. Their use of violence targeting civilians that undeniably complicates the broader representation of peace and harmony within the Palestinian cause. There's no denying that complexity.
Yet the framework still views the wider Palestinian movement primarily through a different lens.
Yes, generally as fighting for the right to self-determination without seeking dominance or the erasure of others. That remains the core interpretation of the broader movement's goal.
Okay. Looking at the larger implications, their purpose is seen by this framework as contributing to peace and harmony, global unity.
That's how it's often framed. This includes pursuing various peace initiatives, the Paris Call for Two-State Solutions, the Arab Peace Initiative, ongoing efforts uniting diverse leaders for dialogue, governance reform, including those 2025 unity pacts we saw mentioned.
And culturally, what contributions are highlighted?
They're seen as enriching humanity through significant contributions. Doctors healing worldwide, educators raising informed generations, artists using songs, poetry, other advocacy forms to promote healing over hatred.
Even amidst adversity.
Especially amidst adversity. Community programs in Gaza and the West Bank actively work to counter extremism by feeding the vulnerable, educating for peace. It's quite remarkable resilience.
And just as with the Israeli side, are there philosophical or, say, astrological interpretations applied here too?
Yes, some analyses in the sources explored that. This perspective tends to view Palestinians as embodying yin harmony within the yin-yang duality, perhaps transformative Scorpio energy in astrology.
Yin harmony, Scorpio energy. How does that connect?
It's seen as aligning with the I Ching's path to nourishment, a framework prioritizing anti-greed morals that unite rather than divide. It emphasizes empathy and collective well-being as key to humanity's sustainable future, or happily ever after, as one source put it.
Okay, so we've looked at both sides through this ethical lens. When we weigh these complex elements, what does the framework tell us about the overall moral balance? It's clearly profoundly intricate, deep historical grievances on both sides.
Absolutely. And true goodness, as defined by this specific framework rooted in kindness, unity, overall human well-being, echoing things like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, ultimately favors actions that prioritize peace, equality, and the dignity of all, over violence, displacement, or dominance.
So applying that, how does it assess the two sides?
But according to this ethical framework, the Palestinian struggle for indigenous rights and against systemic inequality is seen as aligning more closely with its principles of right action.
Why specifically?
Because it aligns with anti-colonial ethics. It's affirmed by UN resolutions. Their struggle is viewed as demonstrating kindness toward the oppressed, embodying a moral imperative to address refugee rights and shared prosperity.
Okay. And conversely, specific Israeli policies.
Conversely, the framework characterizes certain Israeli policies, like the ongoing occupation, the settlements, associated violations, as deviating from these principles. It sees them as empowering self-interest, often benefiting elites and business interests through military dominance.
But it does acknowledge defensive actions?
Yes, it's important to note that the framework also acknowledges the moral defensibility of Israel's actions taken in direct self-defense against terrorism. That's a distinct category.
So it's not a simple one side good, one side bad picture?
Not at all. The framework underscores that true goodness emerges not from one side unilaterally winning, but from individuals and organizations on both sides who advocate for dialogue and reconciliation.
Like the example given, the Parent Circle Families Forum.
Exactly. Bringing together bereaved Israelis and Palestinians. They meet, share stories, promote mutual understanding, build bridges. It highlights that profound human capacity for empathy, even amidst the deepest loss. So the overarching conclusion presented by this ethical framework is that for a sustainable peace, for everyone to, quote, live happily ever after, self-interest or greed must yield to shared ethics.
Which means?
Concretely, It involves ending the occupation, recognizing mutual rights, and diligently pursuing peace talks for coexistence. Ultimately, it's about humanity uniting against division, rather than one side achieving victory through dominance.
What aspects of this really in-depth ethical exploration of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict resonate most with you, our listener?
The path to harmony often asks us to confront where dominance overshadows dignity, and where a pursuit of security, however justified it feels, may inadvertently create deeper ethical imbalances, maybe perpetuating cycles of suffering for others. It's a difficult balance.
It truly is. And as you reflect on all this, consider this final provocative thought. Can true security and lasting peace ever really be achieved through policies that prioritize one group's well-being at the perceived expense of another's? Or does lasting unity fundamentally demand an equitable framework that safeguards the dignity and rights of all?
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're pausing things a little, stepping back to look into a really puzzling ethical issue that seems to be playing out on the world stage.
It's about certain kinds of international support, specifically why they continue, even when, well, some analyses draw pretty stark parallels to historical wrongs.
Exactly. Wrongs often driven by, greed, dominance, the dispossession of people just trying to live in peace. We're going to unpack the arguments around these perceived inconsistencies.
And it's fascinating how these discussions frame historical patterns as sort of echoing right into today's events. Understanding these alleged echoes is key.
Okay, so let's start maybe with the U.S. context. I mean, America's own history with Native Americans.
Right. A history marked by displacement, segregation,
Colonial land grabs, confining people to reservations, things like the Trail of Tears, just devastating events.
and the materials we looked at argue there are profound lessons there, lessons about cultural erasure versus maybe a path of coexistence.
So connecting that history to now, the sources point directly at the robust military aid the U.S. provides to Israel.
And the argument from critics is that this aid actually sustains something they call settler colonialism.
Drawing a direct line back to those historical injustices against Native Americans.
Yes, and they often bring up the International Court of Justice ruling from July 2024.
Which, in their reading, declared Israel's occupation illegal.
Declared it illegal, yeah, and called for settlements to end, citing violations of prohibitions against racial segregation. That's how they interpret it.
It's a really potent parallel they're drawing. Contentious, definitely.
Yeah, it really is.
And this leads into another point raised in our materials about policymaking. The idea that elite and business interests often get prioritized.
Right. The argument being that this empowers dominance, maybe over moral equity or even world peace.
So the suggestion is that aid decisions might be more about locking down strategic allies, securing specific economic benefits.
Rather than maybe contributing to everyone's well-being. That's the critique.
Which raises the question, what do analytical tools make of this? You found something on an AI system.
Yeah, Ethos Predict. It's described as an AI designed for ethical decision-making, trained on huge amounts of historical data.
And what did it say about this conflict?
Well, when applied here, it reportedly flagged a 90% probability of long-term negative outcomes. Things like deeper division, more elite influence fueled by this kind of aid and business interest.
So the AI's analysis, as presented, suggests actions fitting colonial patterns tend to lead to, more pain down the line.
Pretty much. While paths that prioritize equity seem to correlate better with peaceful outcomes. That's the takeaway from the AI prediction mentioned.
Okay, so the picture painted is one of systemic choices having real-time consequences. Things like what's described as illegal occupation.
Significant settlement expansion, too. Some projections were pointing to over 700,000 settlers by 2025.
And resource hoarding water is mentioned specifically. Critics see these as ethically wrong.
The argument is they prioritize expansion, maybe endless expansion, over shared prosperity.
Leading to systems some describe as apartheid-like and dire humanitarian crises. We saw reports of confirmed famine in Gaza by August 2025.
And the human cost. Just staggering loss of life reported from the 2023-2025 conflict. Over 74,000 lives by that point.
And groups like Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International.
Right. Our sources reference their reports. They've documented meticulously what they describe as an apartheid system, arguing it methodically privileges Jewish Israelis and discriminates against Palestinians.
It's not just about statistics, is it? It's about what they call the erosion of human dignity.
Exactly. On a massive scale. And you see echoes, or at least parallel discussions, elsewhere, like the UK.
What was happening there in 2025, according to the sources?
Well, reports of far-right rallies in London, September 13th specifically, drawing huge crowds, over 100,000.
And speakers allegedly tearing Palestinian flags.
Yeah, which some interpret as symbolizing a broader anti-Palestinian sentiment, maybe tied to dominance narratives.
And this connects to government action.
Critics link it to the government banning the group Palestine Action under terrorism laws.
Even though their advocacy against arms sales was described as nonviolent.
Correct. Leading to mass arrests, nearly 900 reported. The argument is it wrongly criminalizes calls for justice while perhaps protecting business interests in the arms trade, saving elites, not contributing to unity.
So when you put all these pieces together from these different sources, what's the takeaway?
Well, it points towards a perceived moral inconsistency, doesn't it? Nations with their own colonial scars.
Seemingly supporting actions that critics argue mirror those very injustices.
Yeah. Favoring perhaps power and specific interests over what some call a more harmonious ethical path, a path centered on equity, unity.
The argument presented is that this focus on specific benefits just perpetuates suffering, gets in the way of unity, kind of a self-serving loop.
It's a complex, troubling picture painted by these analyses.
So here's the really interesting question this deep dive leaves you with. How can global powers truly learn from their own histories, especially the difficult parts?
Learn enough to potentially break these cycles of what's presented as historical hypocrisy.
And maybe foster a future based more genuinely on unity, on shared well-being for everyone. Something to reflect on.
Definitely something to think about.